All right, Craig, we've been talking about agency relationships. We've been talking about commissions. I think it's important, and we'd like to discuss really clearly and visually, how does compensation work? Who pays who? And who's agreeing to what in this commission structure? So Craig is gracious and has got his whiteboard out, and today is the day that is going to be clear as possible, and I'm excited about this.
Thanks, Steve. So we have this whiteboard magically appeared. Ideally, in every real estate transaction, there would actually be 4 contracts involved. So I just want to diagram it for you as our Utah members. You guys are familiar with this, but how you explain it to your clients, just so that it's clear, that it flows, that everyone is clear about, it's transparent and clear as to the respective obligations. Okay, so we have the seller and the buyer, right? We have the seller and the listing brokerage. We have the buyer and the buyer's brokerage, right? And we went through those respective agency agreements. Okay, and so we're going to go through each of these contracts and the implications there. So seller and buyer, they're typically connected through the purchase agreement, right? Which is going to be the real estate purchase contract or the REPC. You have the seller and the listing brokers. They're connected through the exclusive right to sell or the listing agreement, right? And that's where the seller agrees in the listing agreement, I am going to pay you for your services to help me sell my property. The buyer and the buyer's brokerage, they are connected through the buyer-broker agreement. A lot of acronyms here, but they're connected through the buyer-broker agreement. Again, and I just want to reemphasize, this is where the buyer agrees to pay the buyer's brokerage. They are saying, I will pay you to represent me as the buyer. Okay, so we have those 3 contracts in play, really clear. Now, the listing brokerage and the buyer's brokerage, oftentimes they are connected, but not always. They can be connected through a separate agreement, but they're often connected through the MLS, or the offer of compensation from the listing brokers to the buyer's brokerage. Okay, so we have the respective agreements or contract in place, and so there's 4 contracts in place. So seller and listing broker, they've negotiated a commission in the listing agreement. And again, it's not fixed, it's whatever the 2 parties have negotiated. We're just going to say X%, okay? Because that could be any dollar amount. We'll just put X%. So they have X% here. And then if we look at the buyer-broker agreement, again, that's a buyer responsibility. So let's just put Y%. Okay? So that is negotiated between the buyer and the respective brokerages and the seller and their respective brokerage. And let's say, under the listing agreement, because again, it's clear in the UAR agreement, the seller has come into agreement with the listing broker as to what the listing broker is going to offer on the MLS. And let's say in this case, they offer Y%. If the buyer goes under contract with the seller and completes that purchase, the listing broker, by virtue of their contract with the buyer's brokerage, agrees to pay Y%, which in this case would satisfy or offset the buyer's obligation under the buyer-broker agreement.